Okay, so imagine growing up with ADHD as a woman who never seemed to be able to get it together in any area of life. You're always losing things, running late, forgetting deadlines, and constantly wondering why everything feels just harder for you. And it doesn't seem like it's that hard for anybody else. Then maybe you get married, have kids, and now you're really stuck in a cycle of chaos and shame because, let's be real, your responsibilities never end after that. Actually, in reality, your responsibilities never end, whether you're a mother, wife, or not. But now, on top of that, let me mute this really quick. You have the pressures of becoming a Proverbs 31 woman. You know, that one, that lady, the one that wakes up before dawn, runs a business, takes care of her home, and just carries herself with strength and dignity. Like it's just like another clothing item, right? This has been my life for years. She just felt like a checklist I could never complete and just a standard that I definitely could never meet. I remember just looking at other women in the church that were her in my eyes, right? So I want to talk about this because I know I'm not alone. So if this is something that you have been feeling or that you have felt in the past, let's chat for a little while. Hey lovely souls, and welcome back to my channel. Before I dive in, I really want to say thank you for your kind words, your encouragement, and definitely your patience. This past week was interesting, and it felt like an emotional whiplash, to be honest. Between the passing of my grandfather to 2 days later, I was celebrating my 45th birthday as best as I could with my family, and my husband spent a lot of time with him, which was wonderful. And then on Monday, it was actually my mom's 60th birthday. We live in different states, so it was kind of hard not to be able to go home right away to spend time with her. So it was a lot, and to be honest, I didn't know how to feel. You know, like how do you hold grief and gratitude all in the same breath? Or how do you mourn the loss of someone that's dear to you and also try to celebrate another year of life? I know my husband had a similar experience where a couple of days before his birthday, a very dear friend of his passed, and every year he struggles with this. So now I'm like, I remember telling him last week, like, okay, like I get it because it is really hard. But in that tension between sorrow and celebration, God reminded me that there is room for both. And there is space to feel deeply, to process slowly, and to keep showing up imperfectly, yet intentionally. So that's what brings me to this topic, a topic that has always been heavy in my heart, but it has intensified lately. When I first started this channel, it was going to be a channel about being a woman with ADHD who is also a Christian and is also a mom and is also a wife, and there was a shift obviously on my content and the reason for my channel, but it doesn't mean that I can't talk about it, and that's why we're here today. So yeah, I am that woman. I am that perfectionist, which was really odd when it was told to me that I am a perfectionist, because I've always felt like I just could never get anything quite right. People talk about A-type personality, B-type. I always used to joke and say that I'm like a C-type personality. I don't know, like, because there's sometimes things that I was really passionate and I would like go 100%, and there were things that I was like, sure, I'll do it when I can. And it never felt real. Like I always felt like I couldn't get things quite right. And not because I wasn't trying, but it was like my brain didn't want to work with me. And what I didn't know most of my life is that I had ADHD. And it was interesting because I just always felt like life was harder for me. And for the majority of my life, I always felt like I was a problem because back then, no one really talked about ADHD and what it looks like on women. And mind you, I am not American. Like, I was born in Dominican Republic, I was raised in Puerto Rico, and I moved to the United States when I was 14. So I come from a background of people who don't talk about, who, like, the culture was never to talk about mental health. So I didn't really know or even understood. And one of the things is, like, with women, it doesn't always show up as hyperactivity. For many of us, it shows up as chronic disorganization, mental fatigue, emotional sensitivity, forgetfulness, and a brain that just never seems to slow down. And for years, I struggled with anxiety and depression. And there were other things that happened, some trauma that I experienced as a child, that the more I learn about ADHD and the brain, so we're not going to talk about that. But honestly, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was the issue. I thought I was just broken. And I spent the majority of my life with that perception of myself, which, if most of you know, that's really a very unhealthy way to look at yourself. So I finally went to the doctor, a psychiatrist, because I had read an article, and so much of what was in that article about women and ADHD, they felt very familiar. And on top of that, the day I read about that article that was shared via social media at the time, I was standing in front of a pile of laundry. I picture this. I had taken everything out of my closet because I was on a journey to become a minimalist and wanted to have a capsule wardrobe. That's the hyperfixation at the time. And I had put all my clothes on top of the bed and I shut down. I completely paralyzed, where I didn't know what to do, and I felt all these overwhelm and all these feelings about clothes. And that's when I actually came across that article, and I'm reading it, and I literally was like, you know what, I need to see a professional. Like, there's something wrong with me. I just kept saying, there's something wrong with me. This is not normal. And I was exhausted and overwhelmed and just desperate for answers. And after, I don't remember how long, I think it was at least a month of going in like once a week. It was like 3 to 4 weeks that I went in, and every time I went in, it was like a different test and a different this, and I was just I started getting annoyed. I'm not gonna be honest, because it was running up a bill, because it's expensive, and my insurance covered part of it, not all of it. And after all of that, he explained to me that, number one, my anxiety and depression were rooted from having ADHD, and I don't have like a hyperactivity ADHD. There's like different, it's like different categories. I have a combined ADHD where sometimes I could be hyperactive, as my husband, or sometimes I could be completely disengaged, and that's where the forgetfulness comes. It's not necessarily forgetfulness, it's that I didn't process everything that was being told to me. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into it because I'm also not a doctor. So anything that I say on here, please know that I'm not trying to, like, don't take what I'm saying as like diagnose yourself. But there are things that I know that may feel very familiar. So for me, I received that diagnosis, and that was 10 years ago. And once I started going on therapy and talking through a lot of it more and more, life made sense. Because one of the things that I learned to do is I became a master of masking. Masking is a form of just hiding behind things that we struggle with, because struggling in a lot of our spaces is taboo, especially in faith spaces. So we are in a society that pushes us to hustle hard, and when we don't make it, then it's like, okay, well, you gotta do it, you gotta hustle harder. And when we don't make it to the goal or the thing that we wanted to do, we blame ourselves more, and we carry this shame quietly, that while we're looking fine on the outside, we're dying on the inside. And that's where that anxiety, that's where that depression comes in. If left unchecked, can really lead to something that could be even darker. So as a Christian mom, me being diagnosed in my early 30s, was both a relief and a reckoning, because for years I quietly wrestled with the idea of the ideal Proverbs 31 woman. Mind you, by this time I have already been divorced, and I was not a great wife in the standard of, if we're measuring myself against the Proverbs 31 woman, I definitely was not a great wife, right? And anyway, I always felt like she was very out of reach for me. I hated reading about her. I hated Bible studies about her. She just felt too polished or too perfect, and even too productive, because mind you, when you're going through the extremities of ADHD and how it affects you, shutting down and literally going through like a whole paralysis where your brain is telling you like you gotta do this, but your body's just like, no, we're not. It's hard. It's very hard to live like that, and debilitating. That's the word I describe for when my brain does not do the things. It's very debilitating. But guess what? Now, and it's funny, I keep bringing up my age because, it's I'm getting older and wiser. And this is why I wanted to do this on my birthday, but it is what it is. I see it differently. I have learned to look at the Proverbs 31 differently, because the Proverbs 31 woman, it was never about perfection, but it was about presence. It was about loving well and showing up even when it was hard. Because I was a single mom for about 12 years. I was a single mom. And if there was something I knew I had to do, no matter how I felt, was showing up for my child. So, yeah. Like show up, right? Even when things are hard. And in the process, I learned to trust God, and trusting that God sees those quiet, behind the scenes, faithful moments, the kind that nobody else sees, but that He always sees. And having that shift in my mind made such a big difference. And I no longer see the Proverbs 31 woman as this thing, idol. I don't know. I just see her as an example and as a model for, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And I know that I'm not the only woman who struggles with this, whether you have ADHD or not. I know that this is something that a lot of other people have talked about, of their mind shifts when it came to looking at the Proverbs 31 woman. So, we have to remember that 1 Samuel 16:7 says that the Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And if we have a heart for God, and we have a heart that is faithful to God, even when it's hard, He will reward that. So I want to give you a warning, because we have to talk about the dark side of comparison. When you're a woman with ADHD, especially in Christian spaces, it's so easy to feel like you're not spiritual enough, you're not organized enough, you're just not enough, period. I mean, you're gonna feel that, especially the not organized enough, regardless of whether you go to church or not. But when you go to church and you go to life groups and you go to like somebody's house and you see how they have everything so like nice and put together, you start feeling a certain kind of way, whether you want to or not. And to make it worse, because obviously now we're in a time where we're not needing to go to anybody's house to actually see how they live. We can scroll through Instagram and see all of the, you know, influencers that are all about keeping their house organized, or like whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's real or not, whether they have a pile of clothes behind the door and everything seems clean. What you're seeing is not their behind the scenes. You're seeing things in the moment, and that will make us feel a certain kind of way. You, like, it is what it is. Or if you sit in a women's Bible study and you see someone from your church that has it all together, right? You see maybe the meal plans, whether you're doing it through Instagram or you're sitting in church next to somebody who has like a nicely color coded prayer journal or Bible, a spotless home, their kids with matching outfits, which I've seen that and I'm just like, God bless you. Because I, you know, I have two boys, but my second child, he is we're in a blended family, so I didn't have both of them obviously as young ones. And yeah, that would have been so hard because that was not gonna be me. Yeah, yeah, no. And when we are in these spaces, again, whether you're at church, at somebody's house, because you're doing like a small group, or you're just going through Instagram seeing all of this, the enemy will always whisper that you're failing. There's always going to be this little voice, if it goes unchecked, that you're failing. And let's get honest, no matter how spiritual we can be sometimes, those feelings are going to creep in. But here's the truth: God never asked you to be that sister. God never asked you to be that influencer. God asked you to be His. That is what matters. So you have to remember that you cannot conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Ask God to renew your mind when those feelings start creeping up, when those thoughts start creeping in, because they really can affect your spiritual walk with God. So comparison, I know we all know that comparison is just not healthy, it's not good, it can really lead us into dark paths, right? So when that happens, again, say a quiet prayer: Lord, help my mind not see that and feel like, because I'm not like that, that means that I'm less in your eyes. Because at the end of the day, ADHD, brain or not, the way God sees us is going to be very different than the way people around us are going to see us. We need to find freedom in a fresh perspective of the Proverbs 31 woman. Again, this is not meant to be revelatory. I know that, I'm sure that hopefully you have heard this before. So I just want to give you a reminder. The Proverbs 31 woman was never meant to be a mirror of like showing you what you're not. Like, it was never meant for you to like look at her and be like, oh, I could never be her, therefore I can't be a virtuous woman, right? She was a model to inspire what is possible when a woman lives with intention, wisdom, and love. That's really what she is there to represent for us as women. And you can do that even in your PJs. Today I'm dressed a little bit more than usual. Usually I have like a sweater or like a little cardigan and a t-shirt. And I wanted to dress up a little bit more because it is my belated birthday post. But you can live with wisdom, with intention, and with love in your PJs and a t-shirt. You don't have to do all the things all dressed up 24/7, because that's not attainable, and that's not really what happens when you're just home with your children. You can even do that with a ton of sticky notes. I'm in my office at work. I have sticky notes everywhere. Like, I'm so serious when I tell you I have sticky notes everywhere, because calendars and planners and I are not like the best of friends, but sticky notes are helpful. I just have to make sure that I keep them in task. But even when your brain feels like you have 37 tabs open, you can still live with intention, wisdom, and love. So the freedom for me definitely came when I realized that I don't need to be a cookie cutter Christian woman. That was killing me, to feel that I could never be like so and so. It was definitely just putting me in such a bad space, right? But I realized that I just needed to be committed to God, to my family, and to the calling that God placed in my life. That brought me freedom. Yes, she rises early, but not because she's superhuman, but because she was faithful. I love getting up really early. I don't have little ones. My kids are older. It's very easy for me to get up early and read my Bible and do all the pretty aesthetic Bible study things that you see on Instagram. But that was not true for every season, right? It looks different for us in every season. The Proverbs 31 woman rose early because she was faithful. I'm sure she had to go to bed a little early, or maybe she didn't, and she just did it anyway. There are days like that where I went to bed too late and woke up early and struggled throughout the day. She speaks wisdom, but not because she's never distracted, but because her heart is anchored in truth. And my sisters, we have to have our hearts anchored in truth. This is where our wisdom will come from, not from anything else. And then a beautiful thing that I had to come to terms with, because again, when you struggle with things like anxiety and depression, and people are telling you need to have joy, you need to this and need to that, and sometimes it felt impossible. And I learned that the Proverbs 31 woman, it talks about how she laughs at the day to come. Please keep in mind, it's not because life was as easy, but because her trust was in God, and that God was going to be with her in her future. That gave me freedom. On my hard days, and I had a few hard days this last week, I can say, but God is with me, and God is going to see this truth through. Again, but it's because I have made a decision to be committed, to be anchored in truth. All right. So, my dear sisters, if you've struggled with the Proverbs 31 woman, I just want to let you know that you can be her. You can. And you already are her in the making. Stay committed. Trust God. Trust in His plan. Be committed to your family. Be committed to your community. And be committed to doing to the call that He has in your life. I want to go over just a couple of things, just because it's necessary, of why she is actually relatable more than we think. And these are the things like I didn't see before. Okay, so this is me sharing sharing. So the Proverbs 31 woman is not an untouchable icon. I already mentioned that, right? She's just a woman living her season well. That's it. We live different seasons in our life, but we get to make the choice if we're gonna live that season well. Her strength wasn't in her schedule, it was in her spirit. So let me break this down for you just a little bit more. She was resourceful, but that doesn't mean that she was never overwhelmed. She was intentional, but nowhere in the Bible does it say that she was flawless. She was wise, but again, that wisdom came from experience and probably some tears. But more importantly, she feared the Lord. And that is her true foundation. Her true foundation is that she feared the Lord. So this is not a call for you to hustle harder. It is just an invitation to walk closer to God, to your purpose, and to grace, especially grace for yourself. And Proverbs 9:10 talks about that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Study that. What is the fear of the Lord? Reverence for the Lord. That is the beginning of wisdom. You want to be wise, you must fear the Lord. So here's at 41 just a few more things that I know for sure now. That being a Proverbs 31 woman isn't about keeping it all together. It's about keeping your heart in the right place. That's really I mean, I could have just said that in the beginning of the video and been done. Another thing that I learned is that I don't have to fit in a box to be used by God, and that was very important for me because I even though I grew up as a minister's kid, pastor's kid who did, I don't know, I've done quite a bit in the ministry realm of things, throughout the years, and there were times I felt like I was just too broken for God to use me. Yeah, that's something I struggled with for a long time. So now I know that I don't have to fit into this like little box. Like, yeah, God can use me even when I don't fit into the little box, right? And I don't have to chase perfection. I just have to chase his presence. I'm learning that I can love my family fiercely, serve my community faithfully, and honor God fully, even with my ADHD, even with my messy moments. And so can you. So, my dear sister, even if you felt like you're too disorganized, you're too scattered, or too different to be the woman God called you to be, let me remind you, number one, you are not too much and you're not too late. You are becoming the woman God designed you to be. One that's imperfect but intentional. But it has to happen one step at a time. You can be distracted and be devoted. You're gonna have moments of distraction. You are. It's life. It's us living in a broken world. But you can also be devoted. You can feel overwhelmed, but you can still be obedient. You can be a Proverbs 31 woman with ADHD, with doubts, and even on the days that feel like things are just impossible. Because this is not about us doing everything alone. This is why God is with us. This is why he tells us in 2 Corinthians 12:9, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And the first time that I read that scripture, when I was actually doing what God called me to do, I remember crying because for so long I have felt like so many feelings, right? So there is freedom in knowing that God's power is still perfect in our weakness. So if this message encouraged you, please share it with a friend or a mom who may need to hear this. And if you're walking through this season like I am, listen, I still have ADHD. Like, it didn't go away, I still struggle some days. I definitely struggle with disorganizations. Don't even want to turn that camera around because it's been hard around here. But you don't have to walk through this alone. If you are struggling, please leave a comment below. I would love to pray for you. I understand these things are very hard, and it takes time, and it takes us allowing God to in us the way he wants to. Not the way we want him to, but the way he wants to. And before you go, I want you to check out my friend's video. I'm going to link it in the description. It's an ADHD tips for moms, support, and daily strategies that you could use. This video is really packed with wisdom and encouragement to help you feel less overwhelmed, more empowered in your day-to-day life. Thank you for being here today. I am, again, so grateful for all of you, for your prayers, for your encouragement. And until next time, have a blessed day.